Hi everybody, it's 314 Reactor here. Today we're going to be looking at Unreal Tournament with some ray tracing in it. Now this is done using a special shader for Reshade, which is done by somebody called Marty McFly, no not that one. And the way to get it is to become a Patreon supporter of theirs. I'll put a link in the description that will lead to them, and that will allow you to sign up and download the shader. Now this is a form of screen space ray tracing, so anything off screen will not be taken into account, but it is a form of ray tracing. So let's fire up Reshade here, got the latest version. So at the moment we're on default and we're running about 83 frames per second, no 97 frames per second. So let's flick over to my preset that I made earlier, ut99.reshaded.ini. As you can see there, got the ray traced global illumination on, got something called DELC sharpen, which is advanced texture sharpening, God rays, reflective bump mapping, and depth of field. Now if you see my previous video to do with the ultimate graphics for Unreal Tournament, I also had screen space reflections on in here, but now that is now handled in the DirectX11 Renderer, which I'll also link down below, so there's no need to activate that in Reshade anymore. So let's have a look and see if we can spot some immediate differences. So let's have a look here in the flag room. So let's turn off the depth of field, which you won't really notice so far. Reflective bump mapping, I've toned that down from what I had set in the last video, so it looks a little less oily now, which is good, but still has that kind of bump mapping effect. God rays, won't really notice them here. Sharpen is what you'll really notice. You see there, everything gets noticeably sharper with that on, especially these parallax occlusion mapping little bits down here on the textures. See, that goes from kind of a bit soft there to quite nicely sharp there. And I think that shader is quite clever because it does it in a way that doesn't over sharpen things. But yeah, so let's turn it off and then we'll turn the global illumination off. You see the immediate changes are sort of around here. So it's kind of enhancing that look of ambient occlusion there at the edges. So global illumination, I should probably define it a little bit. According to the documents on unity3d.com, it's a system that models how light is bounced off of surfaces onto other surfaces in direct light, rather than being limited to just the light that hits the surface directly from a light source, which is known as direct light. So yeah, instead of light just hitting a location, it will hit a location and then bounce off, and then this ray tracing algorithm is being used to, within screen space and using the depth buffer, I believe, is being used to send out these rays to bounce back and calculate light bouncing from an object, from direct light back onto other objects, essentially. Let's try a little darker cove in here. Interestingly, the effects don't seem to be reflected in the screen space reflections here. I would guess because this is post-process and those reflections being done before this is being applied, so that makes sense. In fact, you can go in here and switch it to the lighting channel only, and you can see exactly what's going on. So you can see there's light bouncing around here, there, in the corners. Bit of coloured lighting there. You can sort of see the flickering from the rays. You can turn the ray count up. Where is it? Ray amount 6. I think that default's at 4. You can crank it right up to 20. So you get diminishing returns on that, I think. 6. That looks a little bit better. You can also turn up the ray steps. Minimum ray length directly affects the spread, radius of shadows, and indirect lighting. Oh wow, so you can pump that way up. See, if you pump the ray length right up, you can see hugely how that light is being bounced around, but it tanks the frame rate. Let's see what that looks like on the normal channel. Oh wow. Yeah. Yeah, wow. Ooh, that looks good. That looks really nice. Just unfortunately prohibitively computationally expensive because it's tanking the frame rate all the way from 96 to 15. Wow. So you can play around with these settings. Let's turn the ray amount down to 6. Well, you can see it's really flickering there. Let's turn the ray step amount down to 12, which is the default. Let's turn the ray length down. So we're at 45 frames per second there at 12. So let's pump it up to around... Don't want too much of that flickering though, but we do want the effect. Around about here, around about 14. Ray length of 14. Ray amount 6. Step count 12. And there's some other things you can change here as well, like ambient occlusion intensity, bounce lighting intensity. So yeah, it does do ambient occlusion. It's adding a lot of depth to the scene. Oh wow. So there is ambient occlusion, as I've said, on within the renderer itself. I'm wondering if I can switch that off and get a bit of FPS back without too much graphical fidelity hit. So it's about 47 frames. This is with the global illumination shader on and the renderer ambient occlusion on. 47 frames a second. And this is with the renderer ambient occlusion off. So I think that actually looks a little bit better, a little bit smoother, just using the RT ambient occlusion. And we've gained about 5-6 frames a second, 52 now. So I think, rather than the renderer's ambient occlusion complementing the RT ambient occlusion, I think we just need the one, which kind of makes sense really. Let's have a look here again. Oh wow, yeah. Yeah, it just adds a hell of a lot of depth to the scene. You can ignore the glitching with the reflections there, that's because it's an early version of the renderer that's using screen space reflections. So there's still a few bugs that need to be worked out with that. Okay, so let's go over to Hyperblast. Already this looks really nice. Like that there. Look at that light going out. See, this is where we clearly see there's screen space, because as soon as those light goes out, the reflection's gone, or the light bouncing is gone. But look at that as it goes out the door. That looks really nice. Totally gone, on, totally gone, on. Oh wow, that is... Oh man, that is nice. And even the little glow from the green bits there, working together with that reflection there. That is really nice though, because that is like proper being occluded by the wall there. What happens when we turn the ray length down a bit? You can definitely see. It's really nice. So there's plenty of settings here that you can play around with to your heart's content. But when you switch it to lighting channel only, yeah, you can certainly see all that extra depth and colour added is just beautiful. Let's go through here. There's plenty of light in this corridor. Looks kind of like a bloomy sort of effect as well, but much more accurate. Okay, so let's go ahead and turn on the other things that I have activated in this preset. So that's sharpen. Just see everything gets way better looking with that on. Especially on the gun there, just sharpens up those textures nicely. Get that reflective bump mapping on, get the depth of field on. And again, I think the depth of field here uses the same sort of tech that's used by these two. I'm not 100% sure, but should be more accurate than what I was using in the last video, which I'll also link down below. So that's actually not too much of a frame hit. Oh, you can see the frame rate tanking a bit there, down to 30. Alright, let's check out a bit of Phobos. Oh, look at that, those sharpened textures. that lighting. Oh, that lighting there, that glow, that blue glow through the doors. Just look at the depth that adds to the scene there. Just boom, boom. Not only you've got the ambient occlusion, you've also got the lighting bouncing off and hitting that and changing the colour sort of. Oh god, that looks nice. Especially on the rifle there. Just adds such a nice depth to everything. See any trouble with cranking up the rays there? You can see the rays sort of flickering around there. If you were to have a sufficient amount of rays, I think that would eventually go away, but yeah, even cranking it up to max doesn't get rid of it and just ruins the frame rate even more. Let's go to frigate. Oh wow, so the frame rate is tanking there. Let's turn the global illumination off. Yeah, just look how much that adds to that scene. Much warmer colours coming from the fires up there. It just really adds something to that lighting. Just looks so flat without it. And in combination with the HDR and filmic tone mapping from the renderer, that looks really, really nice. Yeah, look at that. That's all the depth being added in that scene. Of course, the ambient occlusion isn't just like limited to corners and stuff. You can actually do it under the table there. Now there is one slight problem that I've noticed. It's very minor, and that is you can sort of see, especially in the corners and on the gun there, there's this kind of, like in the bottom left there, there's kind of red sort of colour coming, and there's a bit on the gun. That's because the shader can't differentiate between the environment and the HUD down below. So you can see the slight redness being reflected everywhere we go around because the HUD is red. So it's not too horrible, but I haven't found a way to mitigate it, even playing around with the depth buffers. I just don't think Unreal Tournament has a separate layer for the UI, and the UI detect shaders that I've tried don't appear to work either. So it's a minor gripe, but I think it's just because the game's so old. Although running it in DirectX 11 certainly does help. And even at a distance it doesn't look too bad. You can see it's kind of tailing off in the distance there. Yeah, it's not that noticeable. I think that is because I cranked the fade out start end, I cranked all the way up. So as you turn that down you can see in the distance there it sort of disappears. So yeah, you can see that goes right up the hallway, right to the edge of the hallway there. Now it looks like that incurs quite a few FPS, about 10 or so there, going from 0.5 to 1 I think. But I think that's worth it just to max out that. Okay, let's load up another map. Let's go to face. Yeah, just look at that lighting down there, bouncing off, and then boom, totally gone back. Also you can see it's affecting the gun there, adding a lot more depth to that, especially in these little corners. Ambient occlusion, beautiful. Yeah, these indoor brightly lit areas seem to be the places, obviously, where the lighting's going to make the most effect. Oh, look at it reflecting off the gun there, that red light bouncing off pretty much nothing, and then boom. Guessing that's where it's bouncing off the wall, bouncing off the floor. Again, let's check the lighting channels. Look at that. We can also use the lighting channel to see the distance at which it affects. So you can see as we get further away from the main tower there, it's just dissipating. Still affecting it a bit though. That's pretty good. See, this is where the HUD issue I noted earlier is the most prominent. You can see there that red reflection, that red light. That's coming from the HUD. Let's try one more map. Tomb of Sesma. Oh yeah. Oh man, that looks good. You see there's bump mapping effect on the water there? That's with it off. That's with it on. Oh man. God, that looks beautiful. So this is with all the bells and whistles on Reshade on. And that's with all the bells and whistles off. Wow. And the sharpening filter is being added before the bump mapping, so it sharpens the textures, and then the bump mapping shader works off of that sharpened textures to add that depth in. Oh. Let's go into a more sunny area, like up here. Okay, so here you've got light from the skybox, light from this little fire here, a few other things. Just global illumination on. Oh, look at that. It just adds such a warm light to those fires. Yeah, even the fire looks better with that sharpening and the reflective bump mapping on top. It just makes that... Look at that. You can see there. Fire looks really good. And then boom. Doesn't look as good. So that was Unreal Tournament 99 running with Reshade and Marty McFly's screen space ray traced global illumination shader. Looks really, really nice. So in order to get this shader, you do need to become a Patreon to Marty McFly. I'll put the link down below if you want to check them out. But you can get Reshade and most of the other effects for free, as well as the DirectX11 Renderer, which I'll also link down below. Really cool, not too hard to set up. Alright, so while I'm here, I may as well show you how to install this. So you get the main Reshade installer from the website, which I'll link down below. And all we do is double click that, and then what you need to do is select the game. You go to browse, and then you browse to your Unreal Tournament folder, into system, and select the Unreal Tournament exe, and then you select Direct 3D 10, 11, 12. Just ensure that you're using the DirectX11 Renderer, which I'll also link down below. Hit install, and that'll install it for you. I've already got it here, so it just says update. Then you need to grab the QUINT master zip, which I believe is some of the shaders that supports some of the global illumination stuff. I'll link that down below as well. You simply open that up, you go into the location of the Unreal Tournament exe, Unreal Tournament system, into Reshade -shaders, shaders folder, open up this folder, drag those .fx and .fxh files directly into that folder, and then finally the Reshade global illumination, just drag those two folders, shaders and textures, into shaders and textures under Unreal Tournament, and then when you boot the game up, you should just be able to hit home, and that should bring up the menu for adjusting Reshade. And if you want to change the key that brings up the Reshade menu, you can go to the reshade.ini file that it will have installed under system, open that up with Notepad or Notepad++, and you can scroll down to key menu, and all you need to do is find, I think, the ASCII identifier for whatever button you want. And I think the default is the home key, which shouldn't interfere with anything under Unreal Tournament. Let me know if you want to see any other games with this Reshade configuration on. I'll probably try Unreal at some point. So yeah, stick around. I'm always making new videos on games and technology, graphics, Raspberry Pis, Arduinos, etc. So yeah, drop a subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.